Hey, we want to shout out to our sponsors, Daytona Beach Comic Con. If you are a fan of comic books, if you're a fan of comic book conventions, and if you like meeting comic book creators and getting comics and comic-related stuff, then you need to make your plans to attend Daytona Beach Comic Con. This year's show is September 9th and 10th. Silverline will be there, so you should make your plans to be there too. We'll see you there. If you like comics and find yourself in the Orlando, Florida area, doesn't everyone come to Orlando at some point in time to see the House of Mouse? But when you're here, you need to make it a point to visit Coliseum of Comics, especially the one on East Colonial Drive. They carry Silverline comics, even a limited edition Coliseum of Comics version of our comics. So, when you go, be sure to ask for Silverline Comics and tell them we sent you. OCD stands for Orlando Collector Deviants. OCD, Steve and Trish, they're a family of geeks who promote geek things, particularly those around the Orlando, Florida area. They're big supporters of Silverline, and we think you should be supporters of theirs too. Go give them some love. If you are an independent comic book maker and you need to get your independent comics made, you need to look no further than Kablam Digital Printing. They print our books, and they do a bang-up job. They're not only trusted by Silverline, but many, many independent comic book makers. Head on over to kablam.com and see for yourself just how easy it is to have your comic printed by them. And tell them Silverline sent you.
Hi, this is Tim TK, host of That Silverline Show on Tuesday. Join us at 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific every Tuesday night as we discuss pop culture and the joys of making comics.
And I'm Scott Wakefield, host of Silverline's Wednesday Wham, where we talk about comic books and all kinds of great storytelling, sometimes with incredible guests. And we want you to join us Wednesday nights from 8 to 9 p.m. Eastern. We'll see you there.
I'm Roland Mann, and I host Silverline's Silver Sunday. Join me every Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern as we make mine Silverline.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Silverline Show on Tuesday. I'm your host, Tim TK. We are coming to you live with some new software. And I got an echo coming from someone, but that's fine. So we are talking about the rule of cool versus realism as it pertains to comics and all things entertainment, most likely. As I said before, I am Tim TK, your host, and I am joined by, as always, Mr. Quentin Bedwell.
Yes, Quentin Bedwell, currently working on the third book of Trumps and two other things I'm not supposed to discuss and various other things here and there for Silverline, as well as commissions and games and such, board games, card games, and so on.
And we have our renegade child back with us, Mr. Aaron Humphreys.
That's right. I come back. I'm just like, come back. I gotta, I know what my handout is. I gotta come back and get my handout and take off again. I'm the artist on Firerush, which hopefully we'll be finishing that soon. I'm also the artist on Obsoletes, which is coming out hopefully sooner than later. And then I also do my comic book Golly introducing at Webtoons you can buy in my store. And I will be finishing up that thing hopefully in the next month or two on the last issue. It's only 24 pages, and then I'm done. And then I gotta kind of compile that whole thing together.
And we are joined for the very first time by Mr. Jose Fuentes. Hopefully I pronounced that correctly.
You did.
Perfect.
I'm inking Obsolete.
Perfect. And I am Tim TK, your producer/seducer of that show on Tuesday, and the writer-creator of Wolf Hunter, as well as the writer and co-creator of Undisclosed Project. And we are that Silverline Show on Tuesday. And we do have some housekeeping to do first. Let me find the stuff. We have a Kickstarter up now. You can go fund all 4 issues. Well, you've already probably funded issues 1 through 3. Now you can pre-order the complete collection of Kalis. You either just buy issue 4 to round it out, or if it's your first time jumping into it, buy the collected. It's a good read. I enjoy it very much.
Yes.
And we also have a merch store where we have t-shirts, masks, mugs, many more things to come as well. And we gotta make tags for our social medias, as in us. For not the company as a whole. We have one for the company, and that's the company's social media. You can follow us there. And that's about it. You can also find it at silverlinecomics.com. Buy our stuff on Indie Planet. So, as I said, today we're talking rule of cool versus realism. But before we get into that, we're just going to open up the floor, let people get to talking, and maybe reintroduce you if you're not familiar with your Silverline Tuesday show crew. Aaron, what have you been up to? What's been good? What have you enjoyed?
Just in general, like pop culture stuff.
Yes.
I really enjoyed the new Matrix trailer, but then I'm a big Matrix fan, so I was super excited to see that.
I was as well.
And I kind of have some curious theories about what they're doing with it. Did go to the Rose City Comic Con last weekend. That was fun.
Awesome.
Saw some really cool cosplay. I saw this one lady who she had a full black dress, but she did the arm for the Winter Soldier. But the way she did it, she took a bunch of like little, sparkly diamond things or whatever, and like made her entire arm out of it. It was crazy looking. I was like, okay, I'm completely impressed. So yeah, it's fun just to watch all the cosplayers and stuff. It's funny. It was interesting. The first show I've been to since COVID, so not as many people, but actually had a lot of fun at the show.
Absolutely.
So I don't know if other people what they're experiencing with their con. This is my first con back with doing the COVID stuff. But yeah, super fun. That's why I did this last weekend and sold a bunch of books and a bunch of stuff. And now I'm back here with you guys.
Yeah.
So there's just nothing. And I think the other thing too is watch the PlayStation showcase.
Okay.
All the games coming out. Yeah. So
Yeah.
that was pretty cool.
Did anyone else catch the little snicket?
Yeah, the Wolverine game.
Yes.
I'm really curious. Somebody asked me, I had a friend, like, do you think that's going to be good? And I'm like, yeah, I think it can. There was a Wolverine game that came out that was based on like one of the movies.
Yeah.
But it was like its own game. That actually was probably the best and funnest Wolverine game I've played.
Right.
So I'd be curious to know how they do it. It's quite a departure. I mean, you're doing Spider-Man, which is family friendly, to like Wolverine, which is like the hardest edge character. I'm hoping that they add other X-Men. I would rather they just make a cool X-Men game than just straight up Wolverine. But I know that would be kind of hard, I guess, to put everybody you want in the game. Maybe.
Well, this need look no further than the classic arcade cabinet where you could have up to 6 players. Yeah. Speaking of which, I have an extra card for ground control if you need card for ground control.
Yeah. Good after that. Yeah, they I don't know. They have a new Spider-Man game look cool. Yep. I guess they're combining both Miles Morales.
Yes.
And Peter, I don't know if you can switch between them. They didn't say anything else, but just a little trailer. So,
and Venom has been confirmed for that game as well. So,
and they're redoing Knights of the Old Republic.
Yeah, but only for PlayStation, which is kind of weird.
I'm sure because Sony's footing the bill.
Same. Yeah.
I never played it back in the day, so this will be new for me.
Yeah, I mean, I have, I have the entire
the books
quadrilogy for Old Republic that ties the KOTOR 1 and 2 to the MMO. Mr. Quentin Bedwell, what about yourself?
Well, on the figure front, something I'm excited about, speaking of Spider-Man, is Hasbro Monday just released their new lineup. It's going to be the Spider-Man Retro Wave is getting its second wave. So you were going to get a new black costume Spider-Man, a Ben Reilly Spider-Man,
nice,
the Iron Spider, going to be a new Hobgoblin. Hadn't seen him for quite a few years. I like the older one better. But let's see. There's a few more. Hammerhead is going to be in that line.
Yeah.
And
Shocker.
They're also, Shocker. They're teasing also that they're going to do what was once the Rhino Baff. They're going to bring him back and give him a card.
Okay.
And that guy, man, if you try to get him in the secondary market right now, you're going to pay $120. So
when was it?
Nice.
Wasn't he one of the first Build-A-Figures? He was an older one, wasn't he?
It's been a while since he's been out,
Yeah.
And that wave is like super expensive now. I mean, it's just out of the realm of being able to get it. It's just ridiculous, the price on it. But now we're going to get one carded, and well, they haven't actually released it, but they said, that there's going to be, anyway, other sources say that's probably what it's going to be. I hope it is. I definitely hope it is. But
Aren't they actually? Didn't I hear somewhere that they're actually starting to sell some of the old build figures, that's just straight figures and packaging, and not
they
have
do
to
that.
collect
They'll release the Build-A-Figure, and then I don't know, probably a year or two later, they'll usually come out with a one carded or boxed, which is, some people don't like it, but honestly, I do like it because there's no way I can pay $120 for a Rhino.
Right.
I mean,
especially when, like, when half the figures like, oh yeah, and then it's like, Bob superhero, so like some figure you don't want. There's always some figure, and they're like, I don't care, I don't want that figure, but you buy it to build a figure.
One thing it's taught me is just to wait. If there's a figure like Hobgoblin, I did end up spending too much for him. I'm glad I got that version, the old Space Venom Bath version of him, because he looks awesome. The new one looks awesome too, but he's a little bit more slick. He doesn't have as much texture on him. He's more of a cartoon version in the retro. But as far as the Spider-Man, holy moly, they are just like, they're a home run. They got this new buck that they're doing the figure on. The Spider-Man black suit in the past has been in that real skinny Spider-Man, and this one's a little bit more buff and nice looking. So other than that, I got 3 Mandalorian stormtroopers that came in today. So Marmy Bell knows. Other than that, just working on some Night Rise, which is another project for Silverline I'm working on, and also some secret stuff. Secret stuff.
Can't tell anyone about it. Yeah. I'm looking at the figure now. Yeah. He's pretty cool. The black costume was my favorite costume in Spider-Man. The original black costume. Yeah.
Well, I haven't owned one because they're upwards of $40 if you didn't get them when they released. One came in a 2-pack, one came in a single pack, but it's the prices went up on it, and I have just decided, I'm just going to wait, and I'm glad I did, because now I've been able to pre-order it at retail. So I try to buy retail whenever I can.
Okay. And Jose, what has been keeping you nerdy recently?
Oh man, I'm not quite sure, to be honest with you. I mean, I don't play a lot of stuff. I play like one game, and I play it with my son because it's a game that my son enjoys. And I started playing it. Was it Ark Survival Evolved? And it's about to, like, the last. I guess it's pretty coming close to a close with like the last updates, and then like the next version of it's coming out, Ark 2, and we're kind of excited about that.
Is that the one with the dinosaurs?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the whole reason we play was because
and the poo.
Yeah.
I love it.
Dinosaurs? What? Like, we're in. But I mean, man, I hope that's not a requirement to be on here, because this might be my last time here.
you're more than good. Yeah. No. I have just been obviously visiting our local arcades here in wonderful, soon to be rainy again, Oregon.
I've heard there's a cold front coming our way.
Yeah. And actually, something that blew my mind recently. Aaron, have you been to the Mox yet? Or Mox Boarding House? It's on. It's like I forgot the cross street, but it's on Burnside.
Okay.
Kind of like further end of Rose Quarter, but it's a the front half of the shop is your typical geek and gamery board shop. Got myself a new playmat for Warhammer 40,000 Kill Team.
Nice.
They have 10% off on all GW products, so that is a problem for me. But the back half is a fine dining restaurant, like meals starting at $25
Oh wow!
Yeah.
And can you play games in the restaurant?
You can. They have 6x4 tables. You can get tabletoppers brought out, so you can have like your truffle cheddar fries, your like gourmet burger, your $13 rum, and your game of Warhammer.
Why didn't somebody think of that before? Because I know at Guardian Games you can go back to the bar area, but I don't know if they serve food back there.
Right. I don't know if they do.
I don't think they do. Yeah. I think you can bring food, but I don't think they serve food. Not that I know. Right.
But yeah, this is it's nutty.
Looks like we've been joined in the chat by Kasisi.
Yes.
Welcome, Kasisi.
Yep. And that has been what's been keeping me up at night recently. Just thinking about going back there and
yeah.
All right.
I don't think I've seen that one yet. Strange enough, did you make it to Rose City at all last weekend?
I didn't actually. I had a friend, I had a college buddy coming in from out of state, so I was actually hosting him. So I crossed paths with the convention, but we were hitting up other parts of the city.
Okay, all right. Yeah, because I didn't know if maybe like I just missed you or something, or maybe you saw me and you're like, God, no.
That guy.
No way. I see that guy every night. On screen is enough.
No.
Yeah,
no. I was hoping to make it out, but time ended up working out that he's able to make it out there, so. Yep. That's good. Alrighty, so we were talking about the rule of cool. For those of you uninitiated, rule of cool is a term that has been popularized more recently by the tabletop roleplay community as saying something new. You can forgo rules as written if it's cool. But that's also originated in entertainment and has kind of morphed back into there and become a bit more of a popular term. Again, the idea that if something is, supposed to be more realistic or for instance, if not speaking from personal experience, don't look into this. So speaking about repelling into a breach, there are certain ways that you approach your target. There's certain ways that you can't or whatever. And you're also a certain tool you use to shatter glass before actually making your insertion. Mm. It's much cooler just have dudes freaking swing in there, jackboot in through the window and going guns blazing.
Yes.
So for for entertainment purposes, you might go more on the real cool side. Whereas if you're doing more of like
instead of rappelling through holes in the ceiling.
Yeah, unless you're doing something. But if you're telling a story that is more military realism, then the audience might get more into seeing, the breaching tool and the plastic sheet used to strip away glass and all that. But
yeah, which I think is actually more interesting. Again, I've talked about Appleseed many a times. I think he approached things as more realistic. I enjoy that more. I like cool stuff when they shatter through glass. I mean, that's kind of cool, but they don't do enough, like, especially when it comes to SWAT tactics in movies, they really don't do anything super realistic.
No.
And if they did do realistic stuff, it actually is a lot cooler to watch. I mean, it's a lot, funner to watch, I feel. Sure. But again, they're just going, guns blazing or whatever.
Aaron, it's more fun.
Is it just guns blazing? But it's just
funner. I said more fun.
More fun. It's just funner. That's how we say it up north.
Woo!
It's most funnest.
Whatever, Texas. Last time I checked, y'all wasn't a real word, was it?
Well, I say it, so it makes it real to me.
It's real to me, right? Ain't y'all? Those are real words in our dictionary. So now I'm just giving you credit. But yeah, I don't know. Again, like, John Wick. And John Wick is one that he skirts between realism and then cool. And they skirt, as the movies goes on, they've kind of gone more towards rule, the rule of cool.
Yeah.
But the first movie is very much, he trained gunplay, how to hold guns. Yeah.
And you can even see videos. The way he reloads the shotgun looks super cool, but it is an actual. Yeah. It's not really used by U.S. forces, but it is used by European. Sometimes it's the sport loading where you two-hand in.
Yeah, when
I've
it's
seen,
like just
I've seen
And
some
I
guys
will
who can
say as
freehand,
well-
which is weird.
I will say as well, I watched a video this week of a Marine watches Keanu Reeves
yeah.
train, and he was impressed.
Yeah,
He was impressed
Mhm.
with it.
yeah. I
So-
mean, yeah. There was that the scene in actually John Wick 2 the start where it's going through the ruins in Italy.
Yeah.
And the way he, cants around and then he's approaching everything with a submachine gun, and then instead of when you empty, you just turn over, switch to secondary, doing everything. Everything is tagged into, so it just drops to the side. You don't have to worry about freaking reholstering.
Yeah,
So,
and
yeah.
he's, Steph, when he was actually switching the shotgun for close range,
Yeah.
from long range. I mean, that stuff's all, yeah. So it seemed the third one is where, I think it's when they were doing like the horses kick. That was kind of funny or whatever. Maybe the book going a little more like, okay,
This is absurd. Yeah, but
It's
it's
getting a little absurd.
awesome. Yeah,
yeah.
but I'd say it is kind of hit like a perfect example of finding a balance between realism and rule of cool, where your actual manipulation is very realistic, but the circumstances around it are very much rule of cool.
Yeah.
I always thought it was funny whenever he the way he double taps people in the head.
Mm-hmm.
It's like one's enough, dude.
Yeah.
Right in the face.
Well,
They're
actually,
supposed to do one to the heart and one to the head, but he keeps double tapping them two in the face.
Yeah, he double taps to the head.
Yeah, SOP is always after they stop moving, 2 shots to confirm the kill. But if your subject matter is
But if the gun is 5 inches from the eye, come on.
Right. If subject matter is the scariest Russian assassin who ever lived, it's going to be 2 to the head.
Yeah. I still think my favorite scene out of it, and I don't know enough about dog training, but the one where they use a dog, I think that was the 3rd film.
Yes,
I love that scene.
The Belgian Malinois.
Yeah, now, I don't know enough about the dogs and how realistic it is, but it was amazing what they did.
Yeah.
With that scene, of course, they cannot shoot at the dog for safety reasons. I mean, in real life, I would assume they would be trying to shoot and kill the dog, but they couldn't because even with blanks, you can't take any chance of harming the dog.
Yeah.
So the dog was kind of ignored to a degree, which I understand.
Which is very funny. So the Belgian Malinois they used were actual security dogs. They got trained with Holly Berry for 6 months. So when Keanu came on set with her, they're like, "Don't talk to the dogs. The only answer to her, if you try to talk to them, they will bite you."
Yeah, I think I remember hearing that.
Wow.
Yeah. I wonder if she ever took them back with her.
I wonder if she. I feel like I heard a story about her adopting one. I have a Google here.
Yeah. Because I wouldn't be surprised if they did. What is the name of the breed again? Because I know it's not a German Shepherd. It's a really unique breed.
Yeah, it's Belgian Malinois
or something like that. Yeah. Because I thought they were German Shepherds, and they're like, no, they look a little too small for that. Yeah, they're a specific breed.
Well, as far as German Shepherds go, there's even what's called European German Shepherds as opposed to the American German Shepherd.
Yeah.
They're a little more furry, a little bit more stout.
Different breed or whatever over there. And German Shepherds have been known to be. Every time I see them, their hind legs. It's just the way they're built. Their hind legs look low. So always
they
feel
have
like
a lot of trouble with their hind legs too.
Yeah.
Like that's one of the things about that dog is they say goes out first is their hips.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's such beautiful dogs, though. Yeah.
They
I
are.
always see that when you see them, especially if you can see one that are older, you can see them kind of nursing their hind legs a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I'm trying to think of any other cool, and then you have movies like I think we talked about with Dean on Wednesday, which is Ninja Assassin, which is just completely ridiculous. I mean, that's just like absolute like the rule of cool all the way. There's nothing realistic
was the one
about
with the dude with the chain, right?
Yeah, with the chain or whatever. That was so funny because it was Rain. He's like a famous pop singer in Korea.
That's hilarious.
And he's like some ninja now. But I think that was like one of his only big movies he did or something. And I heard that movie was made because one of the guys directing The Matrix or somebody with the Wachowski said, I want to make like the ultimate ninja movie. And so they like, well, fine, here's some money, go do it. And he did. He made this Ninja Assassin movie. So they just, and that was just a one-off, whatever. But yeah, that movie is completely like unrealistic, which is the point.
Yes.
trying to think of any other movies that skirt. I mean, strangely enough, do you think sci-fi movies skirt the rule of cool a little bit with realism?
Yeah, I mean, especially if it's hard sci-fi or low concept sci-fi. We're like 2001: A Space Odyssey is very much hard sci-fi. Like, to the best of knowledge at the time, that's how
we thought.
That's how space travel worked. And then they go into the obelisk goes up and it's an acid trip, which it's like, how to translate like the last like 30 pages of the book, which are incoherent, into a movie. Just make it look like that.
I read somewhere that he had the ending was written differently. They explained it or whatever.
Yeah.
And he either talked to the guy who wrote the book or one of a writer, and he said, no, don't do that. He's like, just show it as it's like, show what they're seeing, don't try to explain it. And so he did, which I think is much more impactful for that movie.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I remember him trying to, and he's like, and the guy was like, no, just do that. But it was weird because I mean, that was when they have no sound in space. I mean, there's little rules like that. Star Wars is sound in space. Okay, whatever. It's Star Wars. They break physics all the time. I mean, if you have a laser sword, I mean, well, I'm always wondering like, what's powerful enough to bend the beam of light back into itself? I mean, I'm like, that handle, if you think of how much gravity that's holding or whatever, I mean, when the person just basically be engulfed into the handle of the sword and just. So,
well, to me, that's kind of the thing. If like when you get into sci-fi and say it gets into military kind of stuff, because it's sci-fi, you have a little bit of leeway because it is essentially a new world you've built and all that kind of stuff. But if you are some sort of IP that is claiming to be, say, for instance, some people know while I I watch NCIS sometimes. That's not sci-fi, but I'm saying it is kind of pits itself as a military type show. Military.
Right.
So when they mess up on something military, it's going to get noticed. Because they've got a military audience that's going to be paying attention to all those things. And if they mess up, now what's funny though is they're pretty good on the military stuff, but whenever they're trying to keep a hacker out of their system and there's two people on one keyboard,
they
got the military stuff good, but as far as the hacking stuff, they need to do a little bit of research that and it doesn't matter how fast you type, that's not going to change.
No, I know the hacking stuff in shows are always like, I always love when people and hackers like they can hack in seconds. I'm like, hey, most people who hack in, especially
if I type faster than him, who's not going to be able to get in?
And they take years to hack into these things. I mean, it's not like they sit there, hit a keyboard and type, like you said, really fast and then hack in. It's like, no, these people are constantly gathering information and hacking it. So
not to mention how you can have an automatic blaster and miss your target every freaking time. Jeff Potts. No kidding. I used to say that about the A-Team when I would watch it or most any show. It's like, man, why do they even have guns? It's like
the roll of plot armor,
I never understood that in Star. I never understood in Star Wars why the stormtroopers wore armor. I mean, what was that? The Rogue One when the guy beats them up with sticks. They go down, and then when he beats them up with sticks, they get hit. And I'm like, then why are you even wearing this?
Yeah. My favorite thing is the Star Wars universe makes much more sense in the books than it does in the movies, and I'll die by this. Where they mention like the guys that you see on the ship are like, those are the dropouts of the academy. They're guys we didn't want.
Well, see there again, you got the sci fantasy, so that right there excuses a lot of stuff. But then you go to Star Trek, science fiction.
They fudge a lot. They fudge a lot in Star Trek, but they definitely more science. You're right. I mean, there's still no the lithium crystals that I know of, but I mean, and there's enough science in there. It's a pretty good mixture, I think. That's a pretty good one of skirting the edge.
I like also The Expanse, although it's a bit more in realism, isn't it? We're like, and then they do go into the rule of cool when they're talking about the alien stuff, but they do very much mention that it's spoilers. It's been out for years. Watch the show, read the books. But when they talk about this stuff, we're like, this doesn't make sense, and they're like, oh, that's the point. That doesn't make sense. But the way they describe the travel, like the fact that they can do faster than light, everything is. I forgot the actual speed. It was capped at like 1/8 speed of light or something like that. And artificial gravity doesn't work unless you're on a spinning platform or you're using horizontal thrust. So ships are actually built with the things parallel to the thrust, thrust origination. So it pushes you into the floor.
Right.
Yeah.
You have to. They did that in 2001. They did a pretty good job of that.
Mm-hmm.
That the floor is on the outside of the ring, and that because I think there was the famous scene where I think it's like 30 minutes in when the guy's jogging. Or was that 2010? That might have been 2001. There's a guy like jogging around the ring, and the ring's moving. Yeah, maybe 2010. I'm not sure. It's one of those. But yeah, the idea is like, you're because I see this with like they're doing this entry, and then the floor is like this. I'm like, it's like. No, you'd be against the wall. It would be like literally upside down and stuff. And then technically, I mean, as far as we know, that would work. I don't know how well it would work.
As far as would be thrust gravity is like the most like thing we're trying to develop the most because that's one we know works. Where if you have some there, nice. Oh, I know what this is.
But no, you don't know.
Or it's the rule of inertia, and for every force there is equal and greater. So if it's going to push you into the floor, whereas the spin gravity is based off of centrifugal force, which is this is going to blow some people's minds. Still a theory. It is not a proven law.
Yeah.
Are you talking about like the law of angular momentum or what?
So
there is that one.
There is that one, but just the concept of so whereas that is like the direct line centrifugal force is just the concept of spinning will create a pull.
Oh yes, yeah.
But like there's like it ties in enough with angular momentum and other things. Like we think we can observe it, but we can't really differentiate.
Yeah, I know with the law of angular momentum, that is if something is spinning and something flies off of it, then it will spin the same direction as whatever it spun off of. And that's why it's a little bit strange that a few of our planets spin backwards. Whenever the Big Bang says we spun one way, then some of the planets came off spinning the other way. So it's been something they haven't really been able to explain, but the law of angular momentum is observable, and it's just a huge problem they have.
Yeah. As well as it's also very weird that we are a singular star system and not binary.
Exactly. And a lot of people, wasn't there a theory that we actually were binary at one time?
I know that was something that they theorized, but that I think that they said that Alpha was supposed to be like our second star that got yeeted away. Yeah.
Alpha Centauri was because that's our closest one. And the same thing too. I mean, when they were looking for exoplanets, they found they would always assume planets the size of Jupiter would not be within the habitable or golden zone, and they've been finding Jupiter-sized planets, and so they're like, okay, we need to rewrite the books yet again. It seems like every time we have a unified theory, the universe comes in and like changes it for us.
We also just discovered a new celestial body in our solar system. There is now a essentially it's just a huge asteroid outside Pluto's range, but it still orbits the sun, so it's big enough to be considered a celestial body. You could, in theory, develop or land on it, and it has its own gravitational force around it.
Interesting. Smaller than Pluto, or about the same size?
Smaller.
Okay.
Yes, so it wouldn't be a planet. It wouldn't even be a dwarf planet, but it's just it's a celestial body of it's a celestial body of unusual size.
Didn't Pluto actually get named a planet? They were going back and forth, but isn't it actually a planetoid now?
I think I can't remember if they renamed it as a dwarf planet, but then now they're trying to figure out how to classify dwarf planets.
Yeah. Because I don't think does it even have its own atmosphere at all? I don't think it does.
I don't think it does.
Yeah. But I'm not sure. Yeah, it's interesting. I didn't hear about the planetoid. I was really super excited when Oumuamua went through our solar system, and there's been some guy wrote a paper that he actually thinks it was an extraterrestrial ship. He doesn't know, but he's pretty interesting. Some of the stuff that he was talking about. I'm like, yeah, well, I can
when you
myself
get a
tell.
chance, go look up Existential Stormtrooper as the Mandalorian. That looks fantastic. Also, if anyone's familiar with MC Chris, if anyone was like big into like nerdcore and like arcade hop scene of like the mid 2000s, MC Chris has a song called Vet, which is about Boba Fett saving up to buy a Corvette. So someone took that and super clipped it with scenes from Boba Fett in season 2 of Mandalorian.
As strangely enough, speaking of laws or whatever, Star Wars I usually go into. Okay, it's all fantasy. I get it. There are certain things still that, like when they did the new, I think it was the second to last movie where they were chasing the people through space.
Oh yeah.
So I'm like, there's certain things like I guess I understand a little bit, but if you do accelerate to like near the speed of light and turn your engines off, you'll just keep going that speed.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing to slow. So it would seem weird with that. Like things like outrace them. I'm like, well, they can just if they can go faster. I mean, technically, the funny thing is that whole scene. You're thinking like, well, if they were actually doing this, they'd be nearing the speed of light after a while.
Yeah,
depending on how accelerated they were going.
Well, it also would depend on if they're in dead space where there is no force effect, or if they're in space where they're like in a system where
gravity fluctuates.
Gravity fluctuations actually be magnetic waves that could actually interrupt it. So, like, that's another thing that we'd be concerned about if we did find a way to go faster than the speed of light. A magnetic wave, if you interacted with that, it could just send you careening off or just rip you out of whatever you're doing.
I could see that. I wonder if gravity waves would do the same thing. I don't think they're powerful enough, but I don't know.
So. Well, what Lucas says every time he gets stumped with any kind of question is, it's made for kids.
Yeah.
They sell all these figures and stuff to attract adults and stuff, but it was made for kids.
Speaking of weird, what did you guys ever think? I read this story in a comic, and it was about the beginning of the Jedi, like the formation, like the first Jedi. Mm-hmm. In there, they basically said that the reason Jedis can use lightsabers is because they're actually using the Force to bend the light back into the lightsaber. And I thought that was an interesting concept.
They've kind of changed, but I've seen that before.
Yeah, I think that'd make the most sense. But then you have
and I just like the idea that that's why it's a Jedi weapon, because you have to use the Force to actually use the weapon. That to me actually was, and then they got rid of the idea. I'm like, actually, I thought that was kind of cool. I like that. The fact that somebody else tried to use it, they couldn't use it. You had to have that sort of ability to do that.
Yeah, so. I feel like that. Yeah. I mean, every time I try to like make sense of Star Wars, I have to remind myself that it's a story about space wizards.
Yeah.
I love it for the fun politicking and stuff, but I can't. If I try to make sense of it, like The Expanse, you can watch it and like, I know what forces are enacting this scene here, or I know why this is doing that. Like Star Wars, you're like, man in big metal suit, lift man off ground with choke.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's I mean, and then you go to the Aliens, where with the Space Marines, which I actually thought was pretty. Again, the one thing I give most sci-fi movies, because I know they just do not have the budget to do that, is they all have artificial gravity in space. Yes. I'll give them that, because the budget to make everything float and move around is expensive. So I get that. So I let that go. But I did like that. I thought that was pretty well realistic as far, and I did like and I think I was watching a making of it where he was really trying to make it almost like a Vietnam, like those type of soldiers in space, which I always liked. But even then, I mean, James Cameron is big into science fiction, so he even does stuff in his movies that you think in the future, like the rifles, the pulse rifles use caseless ammunition, which he said that, which I'm like, most standard rifles in the future, I would assume, would eventually just use caseless ammunition. You could pack much more of it into a clip, and you would just, and because because that's like why it's not ejected in any brass, because when they shoot, they're not ejecting any brass out of the stuff. I'm like, okay, but I mean, he knows enough about science, like, this is kind of like how things would go, and this would probably be a technology at that time. So I will give him that. He does do a lot of research into that stuff.
Well, speaking of him, and going back to our subject, the rule of cool versus reality, what he did with Aliens, with the Colonial Marines. I thought that was a good split between reality, as far as the way they, did their stuff. and the sci-fi situation that they were in.
Yeah.
I thought that was a really cool balance because, a military person watching that, it would have been just good enough for them. And for us who don't really know a lot of terms and stuff, enfilade, defilade, and all that kind of stuff, we just thought it was cool. I know I did. That was my favorite one. A lot of people like the first one. I like the first one. The second one is like a totally different movie to me. I love it. I love it.
And James Cameron is really good at capturing that sort of marine or military attitude. I think we've talked about this before, like in the movie Avatar.
Yes,
when he did the Marines. Like I think the scene where like they're escaping out of the hangar and he just kicks the door open and goes out, holds his breath, and just starts shooting at him and stuff. And when the guy comes up to give him a mask, he's just like, he's like, yeah, whatever. It's that sort of bravado, whatever. He's really, I don't know. Every time he does any marine or military stuff, he just nails like, yeah, that's the total attitude these guys have in these units.
He knows how to cut that balance.
Yeah. He's really good at it. Because in the stuff when he's just, I mean, like when they're destroying the tree in Avatar and he's like up in the jet having a cup of coffee. I mean, like, yeah, that's total military attitude. He's just gonna have a cup of Joe while he just decimates these people. So he's able to capture like because and I mean I have nothing against the military, but there was a certain bravado that a lot of the military pervades and I think he's able to nail that. He does a lot of where they do the graffiti on their helmets and stuff like that. He does a lot of that. Especially in Alien, and that makes it more realistic when a lot of soldiers, especially veteran soldiers, have been in the field a while, will do that to their equipment, modified or whatnot, stuff of that nature. So, yeah, he was always the one that was always when it came to military. I was just like, yeah, that's probably the most realistic. As far as film, I've seen, obviously I've seen more realistic stuff than in comics and books or whatever. As far as film, I think he's the one that nails it the closest to what I feel the military would be. I mean, because people are like, wouldn't they use laser guns? And I'm like, yeah, the amount of energy you would need it to do a laser, and laser's a cutting tool, it would not be an impact tool. I think you would still be using ballistic ammunition, which he modifies that and stuff. So yeah. But yeah.
Well, I really like the technology that they have on. Like, I went back and watched the first Aliens movie just probably about a month ago, and man, just to see those old CRT screens and these little real primitive switches and stuff, I was like, holy moly, this is a deep space freighter, and they're using all these old things. I was like, holy moly, that's so funny.
But strangely enough, you could almost see I could almost see them actually in the future using this now, just that they were cutting cost and corners and make it more durable. I could totally see them doing that even today.
Yeah, because a lot of stuff like when I was offshore, there was a lot of stuff out there that was kind of out of date. A lot of stuff was out of date just for cost and also just old rigs. And because a lot of the stuff that they have like that is just not. It's not needed. So.
Right. If it functions, there's no reason to update it and stuff.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I'm trying to think of other. So in comic, strangely enough, as far as the rule of cool, I've been rereading the Sin City comics, and that definitely is one that pervades. I think much more in the cool end than any realism. And that is one series after reading it. I still think that series works better in comics than movies. I know the movies were really popular, but they still just look like black and white movies, and I think the art really nails that. But that's another thing in comics where I think comics generally, for the most part, seem to push more of the rule of cool than realism for the most part, which I don't mind. I think that comes to do maybe with the art.
Yeah, I know in perhaps what is being shown on screen here, there are elements of rule of cool involved, but it is more so a great emphasis on realism, and then you find the right moments to break the rule of cool in, where it's the big action scene is discovering who someone really is, and then the confrontation is over in a second because OODA loop kicks in. Observe, orient, decide, act. And really quickly, like, all right, this is how I'm going to put down the threat. And there's a lot of emphasis put on briefing and intelligence gathering and all that.
I like it.
Yeah. Also, I was thinking, just because we're talking about military posturing and that sort of everything like that. There's a comic called Black Powder Red Earth. It's an ongoing series dealing with essentially the lives of private military contractors in conflict zones. So Syria, Yemen, I think they did something in South America, essentially areas where like it's not an actual ongoing conflict. It's just there's someone with enough money to hire armed security in a unstable region. And so that's kind of, or guys working with Department of Defense or other countries that are willing to hire out operators in foreign theaters. So it's a really interesting read.
I think the other one.
Rolling Man says, "Whoop whoop! How is everybody or everyone?
Doing good.
Good.
Doing good, Mr. Roland."
I think the other one that me and Tim really like that really skirts rule is cool versus realism be Metal Gear.
Oh yeah, I mean,
and he's a master at doing that.
Yeah, I mean, you get notes where Metal Gear Solid 3, you have a solo infiltration into Ukraine using Halo Jump, which is something that's actually done and documented several times. There was remote observation, which is the common practice. And the I forgot the name of it, but the Fulton retrieval system, which is something that actually used to retrieve personal packages from conflict zones. Then he finds a giant man with lightning fists who pushes him off a bridge.
Yeah, so
he can hide in a cardboard box.
Yeah, and that's totally he has been doing that, and for some odd reason, he makes it work, and I can't quite put my finger.
Well, it's because it's like perfect balance where everything from like the top down, it's like to the most granular things, like we're talking about, like using real tech, but also he can hide in a box for whatever reason. To like the most high level of that, where the entire concept of it is there are players in world governments that use either armament or disarmament in order to gain better positions of control over other players in the scenario. Like, we've been aware of this since the 1950s. But then they're like, but also they do that using these giant mobile mech systems called Metal Gears. And they're like, okay, so we have a rule of cool over here and a realism over here, and that just dictates the entire series all the way down. Is the fact that
it does. It just
I
still, especially with Metal Gear 5, where you can fold and everything like jeeps and tanks. I'm like, I don't really think a cop's just going to be able to pick up a tank that fast. I don't. I think, but I mean, it's funny because he just took like the Fulton thing. It's like, what if you could just Fulton everything? Like, you could do. Can you Fulton sheep? Like sheep and like horses and like all sorts of just like whatever you wanted to build your base. He messes with realism to that arcade sort of like he remembers it's a game and that you want to play a game. He's always been really, really good at that. More than most other mediums, and you still accept it because there's still certain things. Like you said, like I think Quentin was talking about that one show where it was very military. Like if they mess up, people are going to notice. It was an NCIS. Is that what it was?
Yeah, NCIS. Yeah.
And so if you mess up, you can't. But some people are able to like. I think it's also the sense of humor he puts into his kind of helps break that too. A little bit.
Well, like I have a crime lab friend of mine. She can't even watch CSI. She can't watch any of the CSIs because it's so Hollywooded.
The way the show starts out, where you have CSI like lab techs on scene, that would never happen unless something is very wrong.
I think it's funny. There was that show Bones, which I don't know how realistic they tried to make that.
That was one of the ones she mentioned specifically.
Because it was like going in, and then it's like, well, let's put it up on the 3D holographic display. And I'm like, I don't think there's such a thing as a 3D holographic display. We don't have the technology. So the fact that what we have in the Smithsonian is like, if somebody actually made something you could project holographically, it would like be I mean, that would be like a talk of the world. I mean, that wouldn't be something in a thing. I mean, it would be like technology. I mean, the only time I think they've ever been able to remotely get a 3D image is they spray a mist of water and then they project the image onto the mist of water to give a holographic.
There's a level
still alive.
Yeah, there's a level of all this though that if you're a writer, especially, I mean, you just have to go with it anyway. You're not going to be an expert. You should do your research. You should do the legwork and everything. But there's going to always, I mean, in the end, there's all kinds of different people that are consuming the stuff, especially if it's something on TV. I mean, there could be a janitor somewhere. You get everything right, and the janitor's like, "Oh, come on, that chemical doesn't work on that." It's like we're not pushing this show to be like a custodian's, show. So I mean, you should do your research, but at some point, you just kind of got to wing it.
And
the only movie
Tommy Formonte says, "What's up, guys? How y'all doing? We're doing good.
What's up, Tommy?
Doing good, Mr. Tommy.
We I think the only movie that really, and this is their fault, was Gravity, because they displayed that this was working with NASA. So when I saw so many things wrong with that movie, I'm like, no. And they did a story football that was really bad. When they finally made it her the only one in the film, we obviously know she was going to survive. So they took all the tension out of the film, because if she died, that would be a pretty dumb film. So we knew she was going to live. So I'm like, okay, you kind of took away all of that tension. But there was, I mean, and I remember the guys like, well, when we made that, we were sticking with NASA and just became too boring and stuff. So we just decided to do it. And I'm like, well, then take NASA out of it.
Yeah.
That's the only thing. It's like, if you're dealing with, NASA, then I want it to be pretty realistic, because I grew up with NASA, so I was like, then take it out. Cause I expect a little bit of realism, and they didn't. So
yeah.
Well, I really like, I can't even remember the name of the show right now. It's the one we talk about all the time. It's on Amazon, Tim.
Oh,
that narrows it down even further.
It's sci-fi.
The Expanse?
Expanse.
Yes.
Now, I got to say, they're really good on a lot of their stuff, but, they do the same thing that I've seen a lot of space shows do, and they explain the gravity with the gravity boots.
Well, they do that. So they do it in two different ways. So the way gravity in ships work on the Expanse is it uses what's called horizontal thrust. A force of horizontal thrust, essentially. So if you're standing on a surface that is parallel to a way that thrust is being generated,
right,
that's gonna pull you into the ground. So while in motion, everything will be pulled towards the source of thrust, and then when that is turned off, they have to use magnetic boots. So they use essentially what are black tungsten magnets strapped to their feet.
Well, I was going to say that they're really good most of the time of sticking to it.
Yeah.
But there are sometimes, of course, and this is nitpicky, and I don't even care, but some other person probably be watching it saying, well, their hair's not flying up, because
that would be incredibly hard to do, but that is
right.
Yes. And
but they did actually do that in several episodes, but you can kind of tell when the budget is kind of at its max for a certain episode.
Well, if you want to do it hyper-realistic, it could be really weird, because if horizontal thrust works the way we think it does, when they're in motion and they're pulled towards the ground, their hair would actually be like falling down to their shoulders the entire time, because it's being pulled.
It's being pulled just like everything else. Same thing with their clothes. Their clothes would be pulling down. Yeah. You would actually see the stress of the clothes being kind of pulled.
I'd be wearing Jinko jeans.
Yeah. It's funny. I never did NASA the whole magnetic boot thing, is that just a sci-fi thing? Nobody ever really did that yet. Not yet, have they?
I have a pair. What are you talking about? I thought everybody had a pair.
Right?
It's something that's talked about a lot, but like the idea is like the actual implementation would be very weird, because you'd have to find a way that if you like slide pressure onto like your ball of your foot, it would need to lessen the magnetic pull enough to pull your heel up and then set back on. So like the amount of the sensor work would be insane.
Roland says it's called fiction.
Yeah, it's true. Well, that's also another thing is everything has a different audience. Like we were saying earlier. I mean, you have Call of Duty, which is very much your arcade shooter. If you want military realism, it's not the game for you.
Yeah, don't play that
It's a
game.
game for fun.
Or
That's
if you,
it.
on the other end, you have Squad and Arma, which are, if you want to play a game that's mostly about logistics and 30 minutes of combat gliding and canting, and then 2 seconds of trigger pull, that's your game.
Yeah, Arma is really it's not fast like a lot of these other games. Definitely.
Yeah.
It's a simulator, simulator, however you want to say it.
Yeah.
And most games are that way. I mean, I think video games also want to push that sort of realism. I guess maybe more in the visuals.
Yeah, I mean, you have a very dedicated audience for Ice Trucking Simulator that gets an annual release.
But see, there again, if you coin your game or your whatever it is as a simulator or simulator,
you need to be as real as possible. Yeah,
better be ready either for comments, criticism, or get it right.
Yep.
This is why I always like my driving games to err on the side of the rule of cool instead of realism. Because I like you guys. I drive all the time. I want like the burnout where I'm just like flying down and crashing and things. That's it. And they've never really. I don't know whatever happened. Burnout was such a fun game, and they everything's got to be super realistic now. And I'm like, why?
I can drive it down Cooch Street in my Mustang.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, I also like Forza Horizon. Forza is really interesting because you have Forza Horizon, which is the arcade side of it, and then
is it more arcadey? I thought it was more like Gran Turismo. Is it more arcadey?
Well, Forza Horizon is, and then you go to Forza, which is like Gran Turismo, where it's all about fine tuning your differential and getting the right tires on for track. Yeah.
Because I remember trying to play Gran Turismo, and I'm like, look, I get to drive all these cars, and I'm like, yeah, this is boring. I want to I want to smash into things or whatever. That was always my goal in those games. I think when it comes to video games more, because I'm thinking there's certain genres or something that you guys air. Like, I know when it comes to like fantasy, I don't want not to say that it's fantasy. But I mean, when you do more Lord of the Rings, even when you do Magic, there's a little bit of maybe more realism how people lived or whatever. Considering when you do the Never-Ending Story, which is just straight up surreal fantasy almost.
We got stories about people using real life weapons, swords and bows and all that, and the occasional wizard. But then you have dragon, giant wizard man.
Yeah. You're doing epic stuff.
But both are great books.
I'm trying to even with martial arts movies, action movies. Do you guys like more realism or more cool? I think I'd probably err more on the side of cool on that.
It depends. I mean, I thought Shang-Chi was really interesting that it was a story about a guy who was just naturally gifted in Kung Fu and was just trained in it a lot. And he got his powers later on, but it made very clear that he's very capable of being powerful now, just using actual martial skill. But he's just the thing that stopped from being a hero was the fact that he wasn't making a personal choice, and so that was and then they bled into more rule cool later on. But I mean, I like both. Forbidden Kingdom with it was great with that, but then you go into something like Ip Man, which is still kind of cool but more so realistic, and then you get into very realistic like The Raid, where it's about actual I forgot the name of the Korean martial art is, but it's the
I can't remember. I know who you're talking about.
But the Raid, where it's all about it's more so you're fighting to put someone on the ground.
Yeah. It's more of and that's the one movie that really does a good job of going between street fighting and martial arts. It really makes that sort of really cool fine line there. Because there's some stuff he does martial arts, and this stuff where he's just he's just fighting
say for instance, Curtis Vegeta.
Yes.
He's Kung Fu Master, a Kung Fu comic by a Kung Fu Master. that boy better be on his game, son.
I know.
Because let me tell you, every kung fu person that looks at that book, they're gonna be like, "What? He can't do that. You know, he can't
I know.
make that."
I'm
that
just
kind of,
he's going to get comments from dudes who look like us, though, who have never done kung fu a day in their life.
right,
And they're like, well,
right.
our
They're gonna
clip.
be telling him, "Hey, well, I saw in this movie, you
Yeah.
can't, the Shadow
Yeah.
of the Ninja from 1985. You can't,
Yeah.
you can't do that
Shadow
move."
the Ninja.
Yeah,
That's why I've yet to put like boxing in a book, because I'm gonna have like somebody do something, and then I'm gonna be like, well, it depends on which gym you train under.
Yeah.
Each
Yeah.
coach teaches you to do things differently.
Like everybody finally said, is Rocky real boxing? And they're like, no.
I don't think
It's
Curtis will
Hollywood
have
boxing.
that issue, but I was
Yeah.
just saying that
Yeah.
somebody would be really watching his, especially if it were a kung fu person,
But I think he's going to have enough fantastical stuff. It looks like he's going to have some fantastical stuff in his story that he'll be able to break that. As long as you kind of say it. I don't know. That is kind of like, and he's not claiming to be. Well, is he claiming to be a master by saying that, a comic written by a kung fu master?
But he is a master.
Yeah, that's literally his job title.
Master at something. I'm not sure. What was he a master again? Curtis is going to come on here. He's like marking it down every time you mouth.
Yeah, we're
off.
poking him, so he will come on here.
Yeah, it'd be like, I'm gonna have to put everyone in their place now. But martial arts and stuff, that I'd be curious to see how he does that, because most fighting, I think we talked about last time on Wednesday, the sequential fighting, showing the realism of how people fight, and then a lot of fighting where they just like, there's pages of them doing kicks and punches and then they're done, not showing the actual flow, like narrative flow of the fighting, which I find much more realistic, more interesting when they do the narrative flow of the fighting. Yeah.
Well, I have a friend who writes stories, and he lives in Napanee, Indiana, and he wrote a story because in it he practices, I guess, some kind of Filipino martial arts, and his whole point was to make sure that each panel that there was, martial arts moves happening, that it was accurate to what is, what he taught and what he was taught and what he teaches to other people.
I think that stuff's cool, and I think it also, even if, like, say I didn't practice that martial arts, I'd probably get a sense that it's probably realistic looking, or this is a real thing, especially if it looks unique. Then that's probably the actual move that they're supposedly do. Like the favorite kick they've been using, I think this is more in the 90s. I think they still do it, where they do the jump kick, and then like they have one leg out and the other leg is like tucked, like the foot's tucked under the butt. I'm like, I don't really think you could do that in midair. They do this a lot with the woman. The woman, when they kick, do this.
No,
yeah. So I'm like, I don't really think that's how it works, but
no,
I don't know.
I mean, they end up developing like names to like one of those common things you see in like a movie when they're doing like a spin kick. You can't like doing something over 900 degrees rotation. It's really hard to actually do it. So they developed what's called a cheat 9, where you fudge like spins 2 and 3 to actually like get over there. But, But the whole thing where the split leg kick, that's also something that happens. Curtis would definitely know more of this than me, but what happened with the burning of the Shaolin temples, he ended up creating this split where he had sort of the Chinese state ordained martial arts and kung fu and Tai Chi and all this, which is, it's almost ceremonial, and you can tell that it's very aesthetic. And then you still had guys who did combat martial arts, and the way they did were a bit more, they weren't tucking legs in weird places. It wasn't as pretty necessarily.
Right, they're more effective. And Bruce Lee was a big one on that, and doing what works best and getting rid of all the flowery sort of.
Yeah.
I don't know enough about martial arts. Yeah. Still, I would not be able to do it, but White Devil's that's one coming out. Wasn't that an older series?
Yeah,
I think
Phil Leon.
Yeah.
What's up, Phil Leon?
Hey, what's up?
Yeah.
Lots of sword fights, fun to work on, but I have no idea if it's accurate or not. But still cool stuff. Yep.
There was actually one. I looked this up online. There was one movie, and I think it's a movie from Europe or whatever, did a sword fight at the end, and the guy was a stickler for realism. It was like this fencing fight, and that was probably, they said, one of the most realistic fights on screen. Which again, Hollywood is very much about like everybody is like smacking swords together, and most people who sword fight don't do that or don't want to do that because it'll wreck their sword and stuff.
Yeah. Well, if you want to see like something really interesting, like if you want to like see realistic sword fights, you watch a French film, because fencing was such a big part of their culture for so long.
Yeah.
Right, and like if you want to see realistic kickboxing, you watch a Dutch movie, because obviously everyone knows kickboxing from Thailand and Muay Thai and all that, but Nok Mei, it's like a religious tradition, so they don't really like put it in too much of like their pop culture. Whereas in the Netherlands and Dutch culture, it's a bigger thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The most accurate cinematic. Okay. I think it's called The Deluge. There was, I know this film. Now I'm gonna keep talking. And like The Duelist, 1977, maybe. So there's a movie called The Duelist from 1977.
I seem to remember this. Title.
Let's see if I can look. I remember watching. It was interesting to.
Oh yes, yeah, I remember that, because it's the two guys in the open field, and it's it's a little bit of back and forth, feeling each other out, and then it's those things don't go on, like an actual sword fight, an actual duel does not go on very long. Yeah.
No, it's usually one guy will like most of the time find a way to break somebody's guard, and then they're dead. They're taken down. Yeah. So, yeah, but there has been, it's fun to see realistic stuff portrayed. I think most sword fights in movies and in video games are all not real at all.
Yeah.
The one that I always find so funny, I think somebody online even tried to make this, is when they put the sword in the back scabbard. Like, you couldn't draw the sword out.
Yeah.
And
like Shadowversity's thing on that. Shadowversity's whole video or series of videos on that.
I also love him like ripping Game of Thrones and other movies for cavalry tactics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I don't think that's really possible. Because
some stuff is a little bit nitpicky, but I tell you what, there's some stuff really makes you think, and especially I liked what he was when he was talking about chainmail and gambicite and all that stuff, the armors. I thought that was pretty cool.
I remember there was one. I wonder if it's the same guy. He did like how effective Wolverine's claws would be, and technically they just weren't really effective in combat. They wouldn't be. I mean, they look cool.
Yeah,
but would having 3 blades be really effective? Not really. Not
at close range. Like you need, there's a reason why blades are as long as they are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's invulnerable, so he could take the little, the stabs or whatever. But it's weird, and I always think in all the movies, every time they show him cut something, there's only been one scene in all the X-Men I've seen where he cuts it and there's like 3 pieces in the middle, because there would actually be like 1, 2, like 3 little pieces. Everything else he just cuts it and they cuts it right in half. I'm like, no, there'd be like 2 other little pieces as they slip through the 2 claws, and they never do that. And I'm like, that shouldn't bother me, but I'm like, well, then why have 3 claws if you're just going to cut that? They did this in the big scene in the original X-Men in the bar, where he gets the gun and he just goes back and cuts, and they cuts the gun in half. Like, no, there'd be 2 other little pieces flinging up.
Yeah.
And, one of the arguments that I've had friends when we watched the original X-Men movie was that the scene where like Sabretooth throws him on the Statue of Liberty, and, sticks his claws out and like spins around the crown. And
he
like,
couldn't.
He
It would
would
just
never do that. I was like, listen, dude, suspension of disbelief. That cancels everything out.
Because it's weird, because it's like his claws are supposed to like, melt through. I mean, in the comic stuff, like cut through anything. So it would have just cut straight through the steel and sent him flying off. Because you're thinking like, exactly where is the claw catching to spin him around? But I mean, I guess it looks cool.
And so I guess it kind of also opens up to how do you balance realism and rule of cool together when like how do you like I forgot his name.
Hugh Jackman?
No, not Hugh Jackman. He's a writer. I'll think about it. But there's a writer who talks about the fictive bubble where you when you're writing creative story, once you get people to buy in, you give this bubble around the story where they can exist within. And you can play around in that. You can kind of do whatever you want as the bubble. But if you do something that's so far out of bounds, you break the bubble, and then they lose their investment in the story for the moment.
That's what happened to the Star Wars universe with the Force powers. They kept getting further and further outside that bubble, and people didn't buy it.
Yeah, or or if you're doing something that's, supposed to be hyper realistic, how do you sneak in, and you can even do that thing where like something is so advanced that when something mundane gets in the way, it kind of does the same effect where everyone's like, well, why didn't the Eagles just carry Frodo? And you're like, well, the reason is mostly political. Like it's something so mundane that people don't really look at it.
Yeah, definitely. The one movie that skirts realism, but with the rule of cool, is Desperado. Yeah. And I remember when I first saw that, I was like, "Oh, this is the dumbest movie. It's not realistic." And then my friend said, like you was like, "I don't think it's really supposed to be. It's supposed to be like more like the old Gunslingers." But they skirted a little bit because all the stuff he does in that movie, especially in the fight in the bar, right. Could he actually do that and get away? Yeah, it'd be unlikely, but sure, could he actually do all those moves and actually succeed? Yes, he could do that. The chances of him surviving with all those people shooting machine guns, probably not realistic, but it looked cool. When he jumps on the bar and he's like doing all the trick shots on him, I'm like, yeah, I technically could do that. He'd probably get shot right away, but for the concept of the movie, yeah, he could do that. And that's the one thing. It's like, so you watch some of these movies where I'm like, like movie, that's a classic one. Like, yeah, this is cool. And he's technically doing it. But no one would do that in real life if they were in a gunfight. Maybe they would. I don't know. Maybe they thought he was as cool as that. He did keep his guns in a guitar case and stuff. So, that's the interesting thing when they actually use real props and real moves, and they say like, "Oh, come on," but it's not CGI, so they're really doing it in some capacity.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
I feel that they had to make Desperado like, I don't know, kind of over the top.
Yeah.
Because the original movie was really, really slow.
Yeah. They did the magician. I know the name of it. Yeah.
El Mariachi. Yeah.
Yeah. And I tried watching it, and I was just like, that's the first time I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna give props to the remake. I think they took this
right
a lot better because it was very, very, very different than the original. And if I'm not mistaken, didn't he get shot through the hand in that one? Yeah.
Both hands.
Yeah, so in the Desperado movie, they almost references that as a prequel to Desperado.
Well, yeah, not just that, but like there's a scene where like it was after he was talking with Selma Hayek, and she's like, "Can't you call friends to come in and to help you out?" And he's standing there like debating whether he's going to call him. He's spinning his guns, and then he turns his hands around, and you can see the two like wounds in his hand.
The two holes, yeah. So he did tie it into the previous film, even though it was almost a remake sequel sort of thing he did.
And I thought it was funny that they didn't use the same dude that played El Mariachi, and they decided to go with Antonio Banderas. But the guy that has like the guitar case that has a like friggin' minigun in it.
Was that the original guy?
That was the original guy.
Okay. Yeah, that's right. He seemed a little. That was again with the guitar. The fact that they're sitting down.
I'm Hispanic, so it's like standard rule of thumb that we have to watch it.
Yeah.
There's certain things we have to watch because, like, we have to watch American Me. We have to watch Blood In, Blood Out. If we don't, we can't carry around our Mexican card.
Yeah, you lose it.
What was Once Upon a Time in Mexico was the sequel to that?
It was a sequel. It was really weird, but it was a sequel.
It was. It had some parts that were funny, but it almost seemed that in some parts that it was mocking the previous film. I couldn't quite figure out all of it. It had some good scenes, and like when they did the big bar fight scene and the guy like wheels in on the bar, and you're like, is this? I'm not really sure. Like he would break this sort of like real realism where it was kind of entertaining, but I was like, well, I'm not really sure what to make of that film. I did like Johnny Depp's character in there when he said something like, "You wouldn't kill me for 10,000." He's like mouthing like, "Yes, I would," or something. I don't know. There were some lines in it that were pretty funny. And he never did anything else really with Desperado or any of that series. I guess I didn't make enough. Yeah, Yeah, he's done. I was always amazed when I heard that he did the Lava Boy, a Lava Kid series.
Yeah.
I'm like, the guy did Desperado. I was like totally blown
Well,
away.
the
I'm
same
like,
director, right? I'm pretty sure
yeah,
it had the
same director, Robert Rodriguez. Yeah, I was like, what? And that he also directed the Battle Angel Alita, which I thought he's done some different stuff that I would not pin him as his sort of style that he likes to do. Because he's worked a lot with Quentin and stuff. I mean, they did the Grindhouse. What he did,
he did Sin City.
Yeah, he did Sin City. Yeah, he did. Yeah, he did. And which I really tried to like the sequel to Sin City. I don't know why. It's pretty much the same movie.
I could get into it because it felt like just kind of the same movie, but not not executed in exactly the same polish.
Yeah, I couldn't quite figure it out. They added 2 new stories. I mean, the whole story where she's going to get a revenge on work at the end, that was for the movie. And then the guy who played poker, that was for the movie. Those 2 stories were written for the movie, and they weren't very good. And I just reread the comic A Dame to Kill For. That was still kind of his weakest story. I mean, in my opinion, it was okay. It just wasn't. I mean, the best story is the original story with Marv, the big fat kill, and that yellow. Well, I don't know if I can say that word.
Yellow,
Right
yeah.
that
yellow guy.
the yellow guy with some of his best stories, and they were all in the first movie. So I'm like, he kind of did everything that was great in the first movie. You didn't have much left over except A Dame to Kill For, which was okay. And then the last series he did, The Hell and Back, was just weird.
It wasn't even like. I actually liked A Dame to Kill For, like the comic book.
I thought it was better. I just reread the comic, and the comic is much, much better than the film. And I can't figure out why, because it's pretty much the same thing, but I enjoyed the comic much more.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, I tried. I guess I'll just, see the first one. It is weird how they thought it was so verbatim, but I'm rereading the comics. There is little, but I mean, he did cut some stuff out, but very minor things. So, but yeah.
I think it became like a great appeal, at least to me anyway, a great appeal to like watch Sin City because I had read an article about how Robert Rodriguez quit the Directors Guild so that he can put Frank Miller's name on there as a co-director.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, I thought that was cool because they didn't want him to go on there because to credit Frank Miller as I think it was I believe it was co-director. Because he wasn't a director. So they told him he couldn't do it. And he said, "See ya."
Yeah,
and he quit.
Which that guy's got enough clout in Hollywood. He doesn't need to stick with that. Yeah, he's going to get work. Which I was happy. And then of course Frank Miller did The Spirit, and I was like, "Wow, don't give this guy his own." Because I love Frank Miller, man. I still like his comics, but I was like, "What happened to you making comics and you made The Spirit?" And it was like just incomprehensible. I just couldn't.
I have to look into this, like watch The Spirit, and be like, okay, I'm going into it to be entertained, not to like compare it to the comic book.
Oh yeah. Will Eisner, there's no comparison, but that was after that, it was like Frank Miller's debut as a director and his last chances. It was like one and done. I'm like, I wonder for Robert. He's like, yeah, go for it, and he didn't. That was, it was funny. They did you guys ever remember reading Wizard magazine? You guys?
I still have a ton of them. Like I got a big black tub. I just kept throwing them in.
Oh, I love it. Do you remember when they used to do the jokes in the back?
Yeah.
Some of them. They did one where I think it was supposed to be Hawkman or something like the series, and it was like first sensational issue of Hawkman, and then they turn it over and it's like issue 2, last issue of Hawkman, because it was like no one read it. I was like, man, that's harsh. Yeah, that was mean. They did some pretty harsh jokes and that were funny. But yeah, it seems like, especially with comic book movies, do you think maybe that's the reason comic book movies are succeeding more is because they're pushing more the rule of cool than realism?
I think this is, especially for like, superhero content, you definitely need to. I mean, there are, you got something that's more realistic. You got things like Daredevil and Punisher, which, people liked and is generally like considered good, but it was divisive enough that it wasn't getting the same acclaim.
Yeah.
What I think is going to be interesting now is this is news as of today. 11 hours ago on Deadline, Netflix ordered a series of Grendel.
That I did read that.
And it's gonna be produced by Matt Wagner, who is the writer and creator.
Mm-hmm. Now I've read Grendel. The Grendel series I really got into one was Grendel Prime, which was fantastic. I never read much of the original one with Hunter Rose. I did read Grendel. Which one?
Grendel Warchild.
Yeah, that's right. His name was Grendel Prime, Grendel Warchild, exactly. That was my favorite, which I would just make that one. Right. And then I did read something called Grendel Tales, where he did different miniseries. Those were cool, but I never did much of that Hunter Rose. I think it's still going. I think Grendel's one of those series that just keeps chugging along, if I'm not mistaken. Wasn't Matt Wagner the guy who also did the one about the guy who was like King Arthur with the bat and stuff too?
Mage?
Mage, yeah. Wasn't that the same guy?
I can't believe I remember that.
Yeah, I think that was.
I thought it was. I could be wrong.
Yes.
Yeah.
Don't quote me, Comic Book World.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah.
I just thought it'd be cool. On Comixology Unlimited if you have a membership.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm surprised they don't do that one over Grendel. I don't know. Because the Mage, I think he did it. He just kind of one and done.
Yeah.
Sort of thing. Didn't they announce, somebody said they announced more Marvel movies? And it seems like to me, is like, are the Marvel movies kind of moving out of superhero territory a little?
It kind of feels like, well, I mean, we got the trailer for Hawkeye, which I'm excited for because Kate Bishop is the best Hawkeye.
Yeah.
But they're kind of looking more like they're doing the pseudo-religious side of Marvel, or like the weird cosmic stuff. I mean, obviously you're getting Eternals, and that's going to deal with the Celestials, and everything's going to be more like psychedelic with Doctor Strange going into it. I think the only traditional superhero thing is going to be Spider-Man, but I mean, I like
Fantastic Four, I think, is coming up, but if they push the science side of that might be less superhero.
True, but I like how the idea of maybe using superhero movies that, like, superhero isn't the genre, it's the format that you can pack the genre into. Like, Logan was a Western. I
don't really think they're going to make a better Wolverine movie than Logan. I think that movie, as far as a cinematic version of Wolverine, I think they nailed it with that movie. I can't really see them doing anything else. I mean, that was like Hugh Jackman finally, after so many, just got to cut loose and act that character and really did it well. But I find it weird, more the cosmic sci-fi end of things going forward. This is what Phil Leon said. Yeah, I've heard that too with the Eternals and stuff, which makes sense with the Fantastic Four, because I think they want to introduce Galactus.
Yes.
But then again, then you have weird things they're throwing in, like Blade.
Right.
And I like Blade.
I think what so with Marvel's plan now, everything being in some way related, they announced the Midnight Suns game. And I wouldn't put it past them to eventually lead into a Midnight Suns TV show on Disney Plus or movie, because we already have Doctor Strange, we're getting Blade, and also was it Robbie Rodriguez, Ghost Rider, is confirmed to be coming back at some point. So we could get getting a Midnight Suns, some gothic horror Marvel show or something.
So they're bringing back the one where he has the car instead of the bike.
Yeah,
which I thought was really, really cool. I really liked that one.
Yeah.
And the artist who originally, I think he was the original or second artist to work on that, was a guy named Damian Scott, who I went to school with at Cubert.
Nice.
Yeah, he was actually one of the housemates. I would go down and play Street Fighter with him, and he'd just destroy me in Street Fighter all the time. But he did that one. I really liked that character. I still like to see the motorcycle at least once.
Every so often make a cameo,
or something. But I thought the idea of the car and the Charger, I thought was. I loved the stylized skull. They did like more stylized skull with him. I thought was really, really well done. I don't know. I still think the best visual representation of Ghost Rider on screen would be the second Ghost Rider movie, when he was had the smoke coming off and he was melting.
It looked like his jacket was burned.
Yeah, that was
great.
I just thought that was the movie itself was okay, but man, the way they nailed him, it's like, oh yeah, they nailed that character.
I like the fact that he Ghost Ridered a crane.
Yeah,
I was like, oh my gosh, you could do that.
Yeah, that was such a cool concept. Yeah, what was the name of the old comic in the 90s that was like Ghost Rider, Blade, and was it the Midnight Suns?
Midnight Suns.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, that's what it was. Yeah.
Like, I actually like that. That was my first introduction to like Hannibal King and like Morbius.
Yeah.
Like I know that he'd been around for like a minute, and then after that, I was like, "Holy crap! I love Morbius." Like when I saw the trailer for the game, I was like, "I don't see Morbius. And why is Captain Marvel there? Why is Wolverine there? Why?" Like I started arguing with a friend of mine, and I had to concede because I was like, "Hey, you're right, dude. They have to appeal it to people."
Is the Morbius film still happening?
I think it's done. I think the film is finished. Again, like most things, they're just looking
January
for
28th, 2022. Yeah.
Yeah. Whenever
wow.
they release. And I don't. Is that part of the Marvel universe? Is that part of the Marvel universe, or is that not?
Columbia, Marvel Entertainment, so it might be.
Okay. Oh, Tommy's asking how the show was good. Rose City was good. We had a lot of fun there. Saw lots of cosplay, and saw a lot of people dressed up as anime characters. I don't know. I can recognize some cosplays, but the more I go through it, the more I'm like, no, I don't know who that is. No, I don't know who that is. I can't figure them out. Some I can, some I can't.
Like I went as a general audience or whatever for Florida SuperCon like this past weekend for one day. It was pretty cool. It seemed very not packed. I mean, audience wise, it was pretty cool, but like I feel they only had like 3 or 4 rows for like artists or people in Artist Alley, and then like this ginormous gap between them and the exhibitors.
The one thing that's cool about Rose City is they have a huge section for Artist Alley. It's like 10 tables. They really cater to that, to the point where apparently Dark Horse didn't really had some books, but didn't really have a big presence, which is weird.
Because Dark Horse is the one puts it on, but Dark Horse has made it very clear that they push their talent over their product.
That's cool.
So like if you work with Art Horse, you're getting a table, and you're like, but then if you're Marvel and DC, you're just kind of get sent to the corner, kid.
Right. Yeah. Because I know Dark Horse and Oni Press was there, and Aftershock, which I think Aftershock was bought by Oni or is collaboration with Oni, I don't know, something like that. And then Image is in Portland, but I didn't see any Image table. But then again, I don't know. Image never really does a presence because they're all independent creators, so you just send the creators there without an Image sort of island. I don't think they do that anymore. I saw Frank Cho there. I didn't go up and talk to him about that time. That's the first time I've ever seen Frank Cho. I'm like, oh, that's Frank Cho. Okay, that's cool. Yeah. I've seen Jeff Darrow, talked to Jeff Darrow, some of the other famous artists. I do not read floppy comics anymore, so most of the artists there, I just did not know who they were. Yeah. I felt kind of bad. I just don't. I know a lot of the ones from the early 2000s, 90s. Some, like I know who, Matt Fraction is.
Oh,
yeah, I know some. But there's a lot of artists. There was a guy named Matthew Clark there. Apparently, I didn't know who he was.
But yeah.
I
mean, I know like a lot of people, especially like after the age of 25, but then even more so if like you make comics, and you're like, I buy trades and collected editions. Like it's like I only get floppies if it's my friends or people I work with.
Yeah, and of course the big argument is like, do we need to get rid of floppies? I don't think so. I don't know. That's a whole nother show.
I enjoy floppies. I enjoy going to the comic book shop and like saying, okay, what's new this week? Like I have my books that I like. I'm personally a big fan of like Detective Comics, but not for Batman, which is funny. I like because when New 52 came out, it was like, okay, Detective Comics is going to be like Batwoman and Orphan and Robin and Clayface. And I thought that was fantastic. I love Clayface. And then it's more about Batman now, but like I kind of like because I started collecting it, I was like, I can't just let it go.
Right.
Then I started collecting. Was it Something's Killing the Children? That's a really good book.
Okay. Oh yeah, isn't that Image?
I honestly don't remember. I'd have to look.
I read somewhere that was I haven't collected floppies in a long time. I will go through comic stores and pick up random floppies that I think look interesting. But rarely I go back and I'm just horrible at going to I don't go in the comic shops like months at a time. And lately it's just because I've either been rereading old stuff or been reading through omnibuses, and then I get a lot of stuff to the library. Yeah. And so I don't know. But I still want to go down to my comic. I do have one comic shop around here that when I go in, I have to have money because every time I go down there, it was Boom Studios. Okay, Boom Studios when they're killing the children. All right. But
thanks,
but like every time I go in, it's like I'm gonna buy stuff, and can I afford to go in this shop? Because I know I'm gonna spend stuff.
I mean, that's the problem with Moxie now. In fact, I'm like, I'm going to buy $80 worth of models. I know it. But the I mean, the issue here is that a lot of our bookstores or comic stores, like you can do subscriptions. Like you can go and like order in your regular floppies, but other than that, they don't really stock them. They'll get the trades and collecteds and they come in, and other than that, it's just bargain bin and your back issue. Or they'll go through and they'll actually like try to like put complete stuff. So if you have like $200, you can go in and get a collected edition of the my brain is dying on me.
Like one of the omnibuses or whatever.
Was like one of the second longest runs of X-Men. Like started
Claremont?
like it was after Claremont. Like literally like the guy who wrote for Claremont.
Wasn't that Scott LaBelle?
Well, you can buy. Yeah, you can get. You can get like his entire like all of his X-Men titles just put together.
Oh wow, that would be enormous. Wow. Yeah. This some series I collect. Most of them are just
But as far as like your wiki floppies go, they don't get those in, which is interesting.
Yeah, it seems like. Do you feel like stores are trying to push more towards trades?
I almost feel like maybe, because I wonder, as I know, last time I looked at Comic-Con, the most comic sales came from traditional bookstores and from trades.
Interesting.
Yeah, so I almost wonder if like there's like better margins there. For a traditional bookstore, probably. Also, I don't know what a comic store's margins are. That'd be a question for John Medic.
I remember talking to a friend.
I could tell you.
Yeah, talk to a friend who's like, "Are you, because she's into the Marvel movies and stuff. Like, do you ever read the floppies and stuff?" She's like, "No, I just don't feel like I'm getting my money's worth."
That's another thing. Like,
that
like
makes
back,
me a little sad.
But yeah, a couple decades ago, like it'd be a bulk or two at like your 7-Eleven rack. Now it's $5, or you could pay $16 to get 4 or 5 if you get the trade. Yeah,
which is it is weird to me that people will pay like $15 to go into a movie that certain amount of time, or $15 to get like McDonald's or whatever.
Yeah,
but they won't pay like the $5 or $15 to get something. It's weird. I think there's more value in like getting a book that you could take home and keep for that price, and getting food or a movie that lasts a certain amount of time. I don't know.
It's definitely, there's some weird psychology that I feel like needs to be studied. Just like in terms of like the marketing and everything goes into that. I know for me personally, it's just more as like a time thing where like I know I'm going to have, like I have 3 hours on Saturday to read. I need a collected edition I can knock out in that time.
Yeah. I like collected editions because I get to put them on the shelf. I think also I just run out of long boxes. I just don't have any place to put the floppies. And so I like collected edition. I like the look of them on my shelf, the spine.
I'm going to annoy Aaron with how much we come back to this, but like in terms of like design, like the House of X Powers of X still is like one of my favorites.
Yeah. Roland says because a lot of modern comics have about 30 words, you can finish one in 5 minutes or less. No story. Yeah.
Facts.
Yeah.
I agree.
No.
This is why you got to have like, and I will say that with my comic, yes, you can do that. You can definitely do it with my Galleon's comic, finish it less. This is why people ask, did you mean, it's supposed to be one book. My story is supposed to be one book. Did you, like, why'd you break up in the floppies? I'm like, because trying to sell somebody like a $60 book who they don't know what it's about is almost impossible. So by breaking it into issues, I can at least eke it out. Oh, it's $5. Have a little snippet of it, that tease or whatever. Graphic novels, I think, will get more hits. I've taught the guys at the conventions who he did like an 8-run series, and he clicked on the graphic novel. I'm like, what do you sell more? And he's like, oh, graphic novel, hands down.
Oh yeah.
And he made it like, and he said something that was really interesting to me. He was talking as we were talking about his book. He said, when I made it like all 8 for $20, or like one of his graphic novels for like $20, people were easy to do that. When he made it 25, people hesitated. And he said he thought like it may have been the fact like because they have to have a $20 bill and a $5 bill. Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. So you're asking for different bill types, but also the way the brain works. We have the like law of statistical significance, which is a third. Like a number of 3 or anything over a third is statistically significant. Whereas, and then we also work in quarters in some aspects. And because in the United States, at least, our highest commonly carried bill is $100. So a quarter of that is 25. So for them, that's a significant amount of money because that's a quarter
exactly.
Of so if you drop it below that 4th mark, then it no longer triggers that psychological effect.
It's strange enough. I think it also has to do a little bit with the idea that they round up to 30. People like to think in tens. Mm-hmm. That's closer to 30 than 20, even though it's right in the middle. Mm-hmm. So you get it down to $20. It's funny because I sold my entire 10-run series for $40. Took $10 off just to get people to read it. Did that twice. Some people bought it, but I often wondered if they were willing to buy it because it was $40, not $45 or something else. Mm-hmm. 220s. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a weird psychology, but I have heard that when people make trades out of their books, the trades do sell much better. People more willing to drop a 20 on a $20 trade than a $5 on a single issue. And I find that kind of weird sometimes.
And it's like if you look at like the guys like Roland, who has the giant like the ammo crates of floppies behind them at all time.
Down in his comic bunker.
Yeah, but I have bookshelves. I have this is number 3. That's number 4, and then I have 1 and 2 upstairs. Yeah. So I like having things to put on my bookshelf. So I want to get the hardback trade collectors or trades. Yeah.
So it's I'm more of a people often talked about could we survive if we got rid of the floppies? I don't know. I think if anything, it would really hurt comic shop, and if it really hurting comic shops, that's really going to be a downward slope.
TKO actually is a publisher that does not do floppies. They only put a book out once the series is finished, and then you buy it in chapters. So you can buy. So they're like, all right, this is out. Here's the entire series, volumes 1 through 5. You can buy by volume, or you can buy the box that has all 5 volumes.
Strange enough, when I bought books by them, I actually will prefer to buy all the issues in a box because it seems cooler. To buy a graphic novel. As weird as it is, I'm buying floppies. They're oversized because I have one of them. I still need to buy another one from them. But given the option, if it comes in a collector's box, I'm getting the floppies. Well, I don't know why that is. But kind of boxes.
There you go. That's our next
comics bunker, doesn't it? Though.
That'd be actually a really fun segment if we had like a 10-minute or like a 5-minute cutaway in the middle of episodes where Roland just kind of throws a dice and finds something random in a shelf and just goes over what's in his box.
You can make an entire show out of that. Yeah.
Speaking of cut-tos, real quick, we're gonna actually I was gonna do this in the middle of the show, but we got kind of carried away. We have a video for our Kickstarter, so I'm gonna cut to that real quick. If you guys didn't know, we have a Kickstarter going on right now. You can pre-order the collected version of Kalis. Again, talk about collected editions there. Or you can buy them individually and get your floppies.
That's right. And you can find that on Kickstarter and also Indiegogo, where I supported it.
There we go. Here is the video.
Hi, welcome to the crowdfunder for Kalis. I'm Roland Mann, and I run Silverline, the genre-spanning independent comic and graphic novel publishing company. And I'm here to tell you about Kalis. So come with me, let me tell you the story.
Hey everybody, my name is Brent Larson. I'm the creator and writer of the Silverline comic book Kalis. We very successfully launched issues 1 and 2 in the last couple of years, and I'm really excited to announce that in September we're going to be launching issues 3 and 4 simultaneously. The story is about Scott Anders, an astronaut who went up into space in the 60s on a mysterious mission for the CIA before disappearing. But he has reemerged today, seemingly not having aged and also a little bit invulnerable. In this story, in issues 3 and 4, you'll learn more about where he came from, why does he want to go back, who's the group that's trying to keep him here on Earth, and also what the word Kalis actually means. I'm sorry it took me so long. Some of you are thinking, hey man, that's a really long time to wait around for a comic book story to wrap up, to which I say, I totally agree, which is why we're also going to be launching a trade paperback that has all 4 issues in it. I hope you enjoy this story, and I know you'll enjoy Louis and Leandro's art. As always, it is gorgeous. I love it. So thank you again for your interest and for your support, and I hope you enjoy it. Thanks.
Science fiction, action, super stuff. You're going to want to check it out because you love that kind of stuff. You know you do. If you're new to Silverline, I got information I got to tell you. We've run 11 Kickstarters and successfully printed, shipped, and fulfilled all 11 of them. In fact, we're only like 2 weeks away from fulfilling our 12th one. So we know how to do this. We know how to make comic books. We know how to print them. We know how to ship them. In this day and age of unfulfilled crowdfunders, both on Indiegogo and on Kickstarter, I need to let you know that. You guys need to know that your pledge is secure with us because we're going to get you the content. Now, we hope you like the stuff, but we're going to get it to you. So please consider backing Kalis because you're going to get some cool stuff. And if you can't back, please consider sharing it. If you like comics, put this into the hands of folks that you know who like comics. We love comics, we love making comics, and we love you reading the comics that we make. And remember to make mine Silverline.
And we're back.
Awesome.
Yeah. That was cool.
Yeah, I love the cover on that trade. It looks so good.
Yeah, when he's falling from space. Yeah, that's
yeah.
a cool cover. I think this is our first trade.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
Super stoked. So we are about at the 45-minute marks. Hour 45. We're about 50 minutes away from wrapping up here. So I figured, why don't we introduce our newest member here and spend a little bit of time getting to know Mr. Jose Fuentes a little better, since he is our new Tuesday person. We're like, you have the Wednesday Whammer as the Sunday Silvers. I don't know. Maybe that's talking about Curtis's hair, but I don't. But I feel like the Tuesday dudes. I don't know. we just kind of hang out here. So we already kind of talked about this in the pre-show, but Jose, you went to the Kubert SKU along with other Silverline alumni, Peter. So that's kind of, I guess, where your most recent formal education came from. What got you into comics in the first place, or wanting to do them?
The Conan magazine back when I was like 8.
Oh yeah.
So it used to be in a magazine format, and to be honest with you, I don't even know if it was like Marvel or if it was before that. But it used to be in like magazine format. And my dad, had a stack of them under his bed, and I found them. And so like 3 hours later, he couldn't find me, and so he came into like around his bed and saw me there like flipping through the books. And obviously I didn't know what they said, but I remember looking at the art and it was amazing. And so that was pretty much like for me, that was like the beginning. It was like after that, I wanted to know about all kinds of superheroes, and I liked the old cartoons, and not to date myself, but like the old Super Friends were great, and Thundarbo the Barbarian, like a lot of like fantasy stuff is what I really enjoyed, like the old school Space Ghost, and just like the Herculoids and Thundarbo are probably my absolute favorite. But like then I kind of let it go, focused more on like having fun skateboarding with my friends as I got older, and then somebody introduced me to. I mean, obviously I already knew about Batman, but like the Mud Pack storyline for Batman, and that's where they brought in like the different clay faces and stuff like that. And I loved it. I was like, holy crap, this is amazing. And like, oh, you should read this too. And so he gave me Lonely Place of Dying, and I read through that, and I just killed the entire series. And that introduced Tim Drake as the new Robin. And then like out of high school, I pretty much got married and had my daughter, and then life went a different direction. I got married again and had 100 more kids. my other 4 children. But I always end up drawing. I would do commissions for people and stuff like that, but I never really pushed it until I worked so that my wife can become a midwife and go to school for that. And then when she was done, she's like, okay, what do you want to do? I'm like, I want to work and take care of my family. She's like, no, really, what do you want to do? I was like, if you had your dream, what would it be? I was like, I'd love to go to the Cuber school. And she's like, well, then let's make that happen. And I'm like, I don't know. Like,
awesome.
I ended up doing like a couple working on somebody's small press book stuff, and things kind of fell through between us as like, being acquaintances. And then, I gave it up. Like I said, my wife said, go to school. So I did. I applied and got in, and it's where I met Peter, and he was horrendous, and I can't believe we're still friends.
Well, he is from another country, so I mean that just says,
right? He is foreign. I get that.
Oh, he's very bland over there, looking for banners and masks.
Very bland.
So like I finished school, and like I said, Corona apocalypse happened, and we came back home to Florida, and she is. And she basically told me, I told her as soon as we got back, I was like, hey, I have no problem going to work, like at a factory or wherever, so that, I can help take care of our family and we'll do what I need to do. I'm a guy. And she's like, no, I went to, you work for me to go to school. I work for you to go to school. This is what you went for. This is what you're doing. It's like, as long as you're working on comic book work, that's all we care about. And then my wife, like I said, she opened up a birth center, and that's, I bring in some money to help, and she brings in money to help. And
then you got to ink my stuff. I'm so sorry, man.
Oh, you know what? It's fun. Like, I looked at it and I was like, oh my gosh, this is going to be so much fun to ink it. Seriously. I was like, this is a blast. Like, traditionally, I like doing more, detail oriented art, right? Like,
yeah.
But technically, I like doing that traditionally, like with ink and pen and
right.
Pro Quill and everything. And I saw yourself, I was like, I have to do that digitally, because the space and stuff in that is going to be amazing.
I'm glad you like it, because there's even a few when I designed some of the characters, especially in the armor. That's always my problem. Like, hey, I make this super cool. I'm like, I got to redraw this again, but I do it. I do redraw it again. There's a few things I forget, so you'll see. He's like, wasn't this piece there? Just ignore that. It'll show up again later.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, especially when she does her exosuit, that would be character Brack. You know who I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Have fun. I didn't do it to torture you, any of the inkers out there. And I feel sorry for Haley, who has to color it. I'm like, so many tidbits. I'm like, yeah, it's only 4 issues. Just keep it going, and you'll get it done. But yeah, I'm glad you're liking it, because I was like, I'm trying to make it this. I don't really have. I usually ink my own stuff, so you're one of the first to ink my stuff. So
right on.
I do all my own stuff by myself. But the comic goblins I'm just doing in pencil. I cut the inking out. I figured out a way to do it in pencil. And just because I'm like, if I ink this, it's going to take forever. So can I cut a stage out? And I cut that out of the thing. So now I'm doing it a little faster. But yeah. No, I love the inks, everything I'm seeing so far on it.
That's cool.
Yeah.
One of my teachers at Cuber School, Jan Dursima, she did a lot of Star Wars stuff, like Star Wars Legacy. And one of the things that she showed us pages of it, and like she showed us, like, there were inked panels and whatnot, and then there were panels where like they weren't inked at all. Like, it was just pencils and was it water soluble graphite. And then she's like, don't ink that in, just leave that as such, and then let the colors like go over it with it. It was awesome. So you doing just pencils? That's cool. Like,
yeah. If you look at my goblins, it's just pencils, and I've been able to. I take it to a photocopy machine, I darken it there because it transfers our grays to black. Yeah. Then I put it in Photoshop and I adjust the level, so I make it as dark as possible. So it's still, and the idea is to still see some pencil lines, but not have it be in your face. So so I'm happy. The next comic, if I do one by myself, which I will probably ink and color mine, but that would be only 4 issues. This is a big one. So yeah, I'm finishing up. But So yeah, I'm super excited that he's on board inking my stuff. And there's a few panels. Like I said, if you have any questions, there was one panel in particular that please, and this maybe not so much for you, maybe that's for Haley. I'm like, she's gonna be looking at, what do I color? I'm like, come talk to me. I will color mark it for you.
Right.
There's a few things. So yeah. And then quit, and I think everyone does. I'm still inking tradition. I need to get into digital inking, and one day I will. I have traditionally inked. I just don't have the equipment to do it yet.
So I started off doing traditional inking,
Mhm.
and then when I went to the keyword school, I learned more like techniques for it that I never even knew that you could do. And I was taught how to digitally ink over AOL Instant Messenger,
Nice.
like straight up.
Wow.
I wasn't sure how to do it, and I mean, not to name drop, but Afua Richardson has been a friend of mine for
Yeah.
like 14 years, and I was like, "Hey, Fu, can you show me how to digitally ink? I'm trying to like do something and like help me out a little bit." And so she did. She like would take snapshots of her screen and whatnot and like post, "This is what you do here. This is what you do here." So I started digitally inking using Illustrator, and then in school we learned how to use Clip Studio, and I
Yeah.
was against it. I'm like, "Nope, I'm never going to use it. I hate Clip Studio. It is inferior product. It's not going to happen." No, that's what I inked with
You
now.
inked using Illustrator?
I did.
Oh man.
Creating
I
language.
use Illustrator at my other job, but inking
You know,
with
it's
that, hats off
good to
you.
learn, but yeah.
Well, you use Illustrator all the time, Quentin. Can you imagine inking in that?
I have actually inked in Illustrator,
I have
and
too. It's
that program is so fickle, especially depending on what kind of input that you use. It's very fickle. Like it does not like touch screens.
No,
So-
and then every so often, if you try to use it, it'll drop a blot of ink.
Oh
It's
yeah,
just like
yeah. So I have to come over to Clip Studio. A lot of my coloring I would do in Photoshop or
Yeah,
Clip
exactly.
Studio sometimes, but Photoshop is better.
I was
as far as the
using-
coloring for me. Now
Yeah.
the ink engine in Clip Studio is to me unparalleled. There's a lot of ones that are close and they're very good, but I have never, except for Inkscape, but that's been abandoned years ago. I don't know if any of y'all ever tried Inkscape.
Well, I
That's
was
old.
using Clip Studios when it was called Manga Studio,
Yeah.
and they
Yep.
changed the name a few years ago. But that,
Yep.
yeah. And I have a few pictures I have inked, and I like it. I do have a friend who's like, hey, I'll sell you my used Apple iPad to try it out. So maybe I'll do that. But again, I can't use Clip Studio on that. I can use Procreate. So I don't know. I heard it's pretty good.
Procreate. I've seen.
I've heard it's really good.
Awesome stuff done with Procreate.
Yeah.
But like I said, I'll never even on here, I'll never agree that Clip Studio is amazing just because I know friends that will record it and play it back at me and throw it in my face.
Yeah.
Yeah, I used to do the inking. So
really it comes down to what you started with. I think it really matters a lot what you started with, because there's some people that they swear by Clip Studio, and then there's some people who are all about Procreate, and I tried Procreate, and I've tried all kinds of programs, guys. I mean, I've been doing digital art and graphic art since I was 15, but I've been using these programs specifically for 14 years. And let me just say that, I did not like Procreate. And it's a good program. It's a good, solid program, and people love it. But I think, again, it goes back to, if I had to use it probably for a few months, I could probably get as comfortable with it enough to be one of those people that say, "Oh, this is the best thing in the world." But it really comes down to what you're comfortable with, what you started with. If you started with Clip Studio, you're going to be a Clip Studio person. If you started with Procreate, you're going to be a Procreate guy.
Yeah, I'm the weird person that's like still using Sony Vegas when everyone has already moved on to like Adobe Premiere.
Yeah, I'm still using Flash for 98. Windows 98.
I learned Vegas when it was the thing back in 2012, 2013, and like, well, this is what I know now, so I got some stuck here.
Right.
The only thing, and the only thing that gets me about Adobe products, because that's usually what I use. I bought Clip Studio years ago. I need to do it, but I don't have a Cintiq, and I have been one of those artists that I've not been able to wrap my head around the whole drawing on the pad and look at the screen. My brain doesn't do it, so I need a Cintiq to draw on the screen, and that's what I need to get into.
I have a Wacom Intuos for my MacBook for Photoshop, and I use my iPad for Clip.
Yeah. But that's when I used a Cintiq, it was great. But until I get that, and then I see all these kids like, I could totally draw pictures using the Wacom tablet and just looking at the screen. I'm like, yeah, I can't. My brain has been trained too long.
What I did with that when that came around, and that was like 2007, I think. I think it was the Intuos 2 or 3 at the time, and I just decided I am not going to draw traditionally until I get this down. And let me tell you, it was a lot of hair pulling for a long time because it took me a few weeks to really get comfortable with it. And but I finally did. But that's really just how you have to do it. It's like Procreate. If I were going to jump into Procreate, I would have to say to myself, I would have to make a pact. I am not using any other program except for this one until I learn it every bit, all of it. All the bells and whistles.
And that's many art. When I used to teach at studios, I used to help interns and stuff. I would try to teach them Illustrator. They hated it, especially the Photoshop users. And I'm like, you should at least know it. And they're like, why? And I'm like, because if you go into art, chances are you will run into this program.
Oh,
You're going to run into a vector-based program. I know it's completely different because you pretty much use a mouse for pretty much all working in Illustrator. But just you got to kind of wrap your head around it. Because if you can't make it, if you lose work as an Illustrator and everything else is pretty much Adobe Illustrator. I mean, that's the main program. And I used to have artists fight it all the time. I'm like, I know it sucks. You got to dig through it. You got to have some competency in this program, especially if you get into any sort of graphic design or graphic elements. All Adobe Illustrator. They don't even touch Photoshop.
Well, I was good with doing all my stuff in Illustrator until I went to touchscreen, and then I just had to. There's some stuff I can do in Illustrator that it will allow me to do, but there's a lot of stuff I can't even do in it. And if like on my Surface Pro 7, I can't even. There's no point. I don't even try it because it's lost cause.
I use Clip for layouts, thumbnails, pencils, inks. I kind of like Procreate, but love Clip for iPad. So they do have a Clip Studios for iPad?
Yeah, that's what I.
Yeah, they do. They actually had it. They actually had it before
the
one now.
Yeah, they have Clip Studio. Like if you go and get it online, you can buy where you're purchasing either like Pro or EX, and then you can do dual devices so that it's the same clip from one to the other. I'm actually about like a week away from upgrading to like the 4 devices because we bought an iPad for my 14-year-old, and because she liked playing around on Clip Studio on my iPad. And she actually taught herself how to do animatics on Clip Studio, which I don't know how to do.
It's a powerful program, definitely. I did not know that. That makes it because when I have used Clip Studio enough, I've done inking in there. And the thing I like the most is that thing where it studies your pencil.
Yeah,
it's like stability. Yeah, I turned that all the way up, and which after a while, it's weird because you would almost feel like you're dragging the ink line and it would follow behind you, but I would get some really good lines or whatever. The one thing, and I think this works almost the same from Windows to Mac. Okay, cool. Tommy's. Yeah, but it's the one, and this is maybe more Photoshop, but I see so many people when they ink draw the same line, like they draw it and erase it, they draw it and erase it, they draw it, they get and I can see, I don't know, to me, that would slow it down. I mean, when you learn traditional ink, I mean, that first line is like, well, that's it. I mean, you could wiggle it a little bit, but that's your line. And I think the digital stuff sometimes slows people down because you could do it so much and get it so right that it slows people down and trying to get it perfect and stuff. But I think that comes. I noticed with me, I usually had the line. I liked my lines the first time. I was amazed how smooth it looked. Everything looked all happy and smooth. I was like, wow, it's definitely powerful. I still do most of my stuff traditionally, but I would sit there and watch some of the people in the studio draw like a line 5 times. I'm like, dude, this is going to take you forever. Just go with it. You can fix it later.
In the words of Voltaire, don't let perfect be the enemy of good.
Oh God. Yeah.
All right. Well, that is 10 o'clock on the left coast, and that is our ending time. So you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. So we're going to wish you a good night. Again, catch us on next week, Tuesday. And you can also catch our Wednesday Wham Show Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern, and Silver Sunday, 8 p.m. Eastern as well. And we are going to bid you adieu for now. And until that time, remember to make mine,
Silverline.
Fine.